This is the huge Paul Pogba debate as voted by you guys, so we are doing it. And joining me to do it, we have got Paul from Rantcast, we have got Dale from Stretty News, and we have got Chief Writer from Squawker, Mohammed. Thanks for joining us, guys. Good to have you all back on. And there is so much chaos going on about Paul Pogba at the moment. United fans are, I think it's safe to say, divided, and some would say irrational at times over it. So we're going to get into it. We're going to see what these guys think. We're going to get what you guys think in the comments as well. So let's get straight into it. The first thing that we need to talk about then is the quotes. These are the quotes that have come out recently from Paul Pogba. There's been him talking about transfers. He's been talking about what's going to happen in the next few months. But there's been multiple translations of this. Is this a simple case of lost in translation, or is there something more to it? Paul, I'm going to come to you first. What do you reckon?
Well, I think that the fact that two fairly different translations have emerged from the same thing, first of all, that's not very surprising. Translation is a complex art because you can translate the words that are said, but that is a really bad way of exerting the meaning of what is being said. So unless you're a native speaker of the language or at least an expert speaker of the language that's being spoken, you probably shouldn't jump to too many conclusions about a direct translation. Now, the one thing I would say about that is, even if the more measured quote is the accurate translation, there's also something to be said about the fact that that is quite a kind of vaguely flirty answer from Pogba to Barcelona, isn't it? You know, so I think my instinct would be that the more measured translation is likely to be more accurate, given that if you're running a website or a newspaper, the one that is going to serve you best is the one which is really explosive. So the fact that somebody else ran a translation which is probably more measured makes me inclined to believe that's probably the more accurate translation.
Mohammed, let's go and have a look at some of these then. And do you think that the media is making too much of them, or is there a case to be made that there's substance to this and the media should be making a big deal out of it, as it is a big deal? A former world record signing, biggest club in the world. Is there something to it?
Look, it's Paul Pogba, it's Barcelona. We know that the way Barcelona conduct their big transfers is for about a year before the transfer actually happens, all their players talk about, this player's great, this player's great. Happened with Coutinho last year for an entire season before last summer. Barca players were talking about Coutinho, how great he is, how he'd fit at Barcelona, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, Xavi, all these people. We've already had Piqué and Luis Suarez talk about Pogba. So immediately you can see that there probably is, there's no smoke without fire. There's probably something brewing here. Whether it's Mino Raiola and his people pushing the idea to Barcelona, like, hey, you can get Paul Pogba. He's not happy at United. And whether or not United have to then maybe win something to sort of convince Pogba, I think it would be naive of us to dismiss this out of hand, because obviously, there's a loyalty Pogba has to United, but it's not like he left United already once, so it's not like he's like Rashford or anything. Like, he'll stay here forever if you just play him enough every season. He obviously has goals and ambitions to win things. Those things aren't being met right. Those ambitions aren't being met right now. He's got a manager who just clearly distrusts him and has only. I mean, everyone's all about. Graham Souness and his massive anti-Pogba agenda at the start of the season was like, oh, Mourinho's giving him a bit of sugar. First off, comparing Pogba to a horse is a bit. But anyway, he gives so he says that Mourinho's been nice to him. He's given him the captaincy, given him a start, praised him. But all of that was hollow PR. It was very obviously hollow PR, because after the World Cup, Mourinho's comments were, well, why can't he do that for us? It's his fault. And it was so. Look, Pogba's clearly unsettled at United. He's unhappy at United with the current situation, probably largely to do with the way the manager, but also I'm sure to do with the fact that the clubs can't get its act together in the transfer market, can't actually assemble a good side. This team won the Europa League basically a season and a little bit ago. Why couldn't United build on that? I know second place, but the team wasn't better. The team was better in 16-17 than it was last year. Why can't the team build on the obvious talent in it? And I'm sure that's annoyed him. I'm sure he is genuinely unsettled. So I think, you have to take these quotes seriously. I'm sure there's been a bit of Chinese whispers going on in terms of the way they've been exaggerated or taken out of context, or, bits have been embellished or cut off, words taken out here and there. And sure, and frankly, just through translation, certain things come out differently, right? So it's not like we should take them 100% as they're written. Like these aren't the 10 commandments chiseled in stone. But at the same time, I think it would be really naive to just sort of dismiss them out of hand and be like, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It's all press nonsense. I think there's definitely something there.
Yeah, I think there's something there as well. Dale, when you look at some of the actual words that have been said there, he's saying the sort of things that you see players talk about when they essentially say nothing in a transfer or in a quote to the press, when they're saying, I'm under contract, that's how it is. What's your take on these quotes?
It's cliche, but it's also measured. Paul Pogba knows what he's doing. He also knows what he's doing when he's on social media. It's all towards something. There's definitely been an issue since last season with the way Mourinho decided to go public about certain things with Pogba. And I think Pogba came back from the World Cup with a chip on his shoulder, flexing his muscles, and wanted to kind of show Mourinho that now I'm going to bite back. And he's doing that through a number of platforms, through interviews, as the quotes have suggested, through social media by saying he can't wait for the next international break before the current one is even finished. It's all measured. Paul Pogba knows what he's doing, and in regards to his agent, it's not just Raiola working for Pogba. Quite a few people there involved, and they won't do what they're doing unless Paul Pogba asks them to. Paul Pogba's not happy. That's when they will act, and he's obviously quite happy with Raiola coming out, having to go at Paul Scholes. Edgar Davids had to go at Paul Pogba the other day, a Juventus legend, but I haven't seen Raiola bite back at him yet. This is all measured, and of course, Juventus is a possible destination, and I think that's why Raiola hasn't bit back at him. This is something that I think is not good for Manchester United. It leaves a bad smell in the dressing room, and I think something Sam Allardyce warned his players before international breaks was when he was managing is don't talk about the club while you're away with interviews. Just talk about the country. And Paul Pogba had a homecoming party in Paris with the whole team that won the World Cup after beating the Netherlands. But the focus was still on Manchester United, Jose Mourinho, their player-manager relationship. And he's making it known that he's unhappy. And I think that as this goes on, it's not good for Manchester United. And Mourinho asked, why can't Pogba replicate his form for France to Manchester United? That's what every single Manchester United fan has been asking since he's...
It's absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense because Paul Pogba has replicated his France form for Manchester United multiple times. Mo mentioned... He didn't have to do it consistently for France. It was a short burst World Cup. Mo mentioned this. By the way, Mo mentioned the 16-17 season. Don't think you could really argue that Pogba was particularly inconsistent in his first season at United. Look at the numbers he put up in terms of chance creation. Look how many amazing Paul Pogba passes were wasted by Zlatan et al. And the thing you said about social media, did you see the France party? I wonder why he's looking forward to the next time he gets to do that. Looked like the most amazing time any of them had ever had in their lives. Yeah. So listen, I'm not saying that Pogba's behaving in an exemplary fashion, and I'm definitely not disagreeing with you about the fact that it's going to be a problem for United, and it is a problem for United. But I think he would have been relentlessly asked about United and Mourinho, because we know how much that generates stories. And yeah, he absolutely could have played it with a really kind of he could have brushed it off, said, I'm here to talk about France, but given how unhappy he is, and given the way Mourinho has talked about him, I think it's pretty reasonable for him to kind of bite back at some degree. Mourinho dropped him for Scott McTominay, and we got knocked out of the Champions League. That's the kind of ridiculous power games that the manager's playing. So we just allow the manager to play whatever power games he wants, but the player's not allowed to do anything back.
Yeah, now this is the thing with
Hang on, can I just interject to say the second topic was France and how Pogba has played in that. So I'm kind of re-teeing it up. Paul's already gone down the line of it anyway, so I just want to put these thoughts into your head while you're thinking about answering what you're about to answer. So there has been accusations that he plays better for France than Manchester United. Paul's arguing against that. I'm going to come to Dale and get his response to that in a second. But Mo, like, do you think that's the case? Do you think he has played better for France than he has for United? Do you think there's any difference in his role, his application, the difference between the two systems, the managers, etc.? Anything along those lines that you think are playing into that, if you believe that's the case?
I mean, well, there's many things up, but first things first. Yeah, at first glance, he does play better for France than he does for Man United. But there's a main thing you have to consider there. Like everyone was talking about. I remember after the semi-final against Belgium, he was fantastic defensively, working really hard, defending really well, and everyone was like, "Oh, why doesn't he do that for United?" And Daniel Harris on Twitter made a great point. It's like, well, because it's very easy to sort of commit yourself to that when it's the World Cup semi-final. Much harder to do it when it's Stoke away and your manager's like, yeah, just whatever. It's like the World Cup. Of course, he put in an excellent performance in the World Cup. It's the World Cup, and he's a very big game player. The thing with Pogba is, in general, if he does better for France than he does for United, it's for two reasons. One is it's his country, right? And you can't. And it's really weird because obviously, so much of football is so much of society is almost like patriotism. What? But it's like in football, patriotism is a real, genuine virtue for so many players. So many players. Like you'll see players put themselves through absolute hell. Leo Messi is a great example, just to play for their country. When it's like, just leave it, and they're like, no, I can't leave it. So. And the second thing is, tactically, France, I don't like them. They're not fun to watch. Deschamps is just a horrible pragmatist. But you know what Deschamps is? He's an effective pragmatist. Mourinho, he's what Mourinho used to be. He's Mourinho 10 years ago, right? Because you look at the way France set up, right? And it's horribly negative. He's got 4 centre-backs across the defence, although Lucas Hernandez is pretty good going forward. He's got N'Golo Kante. N'Golo Kante is just... And then he's got N'Golo Kante, but then he sits Pogba next to Kante. And he's got Matuidi in there as well. Two defensive midfielders. One Matuidi's a bit box-to-box. Pogba is then... It's the setup from the 1998 France World Cup win, right? It's got 4 defenders, right? And he's got defensive midfielders. That's Deschamps. It was Deschamps. It's Kante now. He's got... a pure shuttler, box-to-box engine. That was Petit. Now it's Matuidi. Left-footed as well, provides balance. You've got a midfielder who can create and go forward, but also works hard defensively. That was Callum, but it's Pogba. Now, there's a bit of difference here, but I'll get to that in a minute. Griezmann is just Yuri Djorkaeff. Just, a white Yuri Djorkaeff. And Mbappe is Zidane. Instead of being a languid sort of playmaker, he's just a jet-heeled striker. And that's where the difference is, because Pogba then, because there's no playmaker as a 10, he has a bit more freedom to playmate. And then Giroud is Gavage, obviously, just much better looking. So it's like, it's just the 98 team. It's an organised, disciplined, well-drilled setup. If Mourinho did that for United, and the occasions Mourinho's got his tactics bang on, for example, the masterful setup against Chelsea in that first season, 2-2-4-2, where it was like the man-marking job, Pogba was excellent in that game because the instructions were clear. He knew what he was doing because Mourinho had set his team up clearly. In the Europa League final, Mourinho set his team up clearly. Pogba was great. When Mourinho sets his tactics right, when he actually works on it and organises his team, when he has a reason to do so, like when he's affronted or whatever, Pogba's great because Pogba does well with great tactical instruction. Without instruction, he's the kind of languid playmaker who can just stroll through games and go missing because he's just that kind of player. He's so talented. It's so effortless for him, so much of football. He can be he can switch off because he's just but look at him at Juventus, look at him for France. With detailed tactical instruction, he's absolutely incredible. And I think that's partly why Sir Alex didn't want to rush him into the first team, because Sir Alex didn't really have... Fergie's teams weren't very tactically, really disciplined. They didn't really have sort of set roles. It was just like, there were a few, and then it was like, go out there and play. I think maybe that's why he thought Pogba isn't ready, because Pogba isn't ready still to play in that sort of just do what you want sort of midfield role. He needs tactical instruction. I think that's why Fergie was always hesitant to push him up, push him forward, and that's why he left. And then that's worked out for Pogba. But I think if he does play better for France than for, it's because France are better tactically than Man United. It's not even about players. Everyone will point out teammates. No, it's not even about teammates. Literally, France are just organised. Man United aren't. That's the difference.
Dale, we kicked off on this subject with Paul disagreeing with you about a couple of the notions that you mentioned. Do you think he plays better for France than he does for United then?
Yeah, probably. I think there's a lot to do with people just constantly make excuses for Paul Pogba. He's playing alongside N'Golo Kante. That makes his job a lot easier. If he was playing for Manchester United, you see a very, very different Paul Pogba on a consistent basis. And again, We can look at a number of performances. You mentioned the game against Chelsea, but like, how many fingers are you going to point up, and how many performances? Because he's not consistent enough. And we mentioned the World Cup and how he played well throughout that. That was an environment which Mourinho commented on that suited Pogba. No distractions. It was a month away with teammates and content. Like, we can keep making excuses. I have myself. Since he signed, we need this player to get the best of the Pogba. We signed Matic, we signed Fred. He's still not showing consistency. He hasn't been the same player he showed the World Cup. So what next? We point the finger at Mourinho, and he's there trying to get the best out of him. He's playing him every week. He's giving him the captain's armband. And this season alone, and although I don't always agree with going so public about Paul from last season, I think that might have made the situation, start this situation really, and it hasn't helped. But Pogba hasn't helped himself, and I'm sick of people making excuses for him. He hasn't performed consistently. And when you mention, it's because it's the World Cup, I'm sorry, but he's playing for Manchester United, and that doesn't give him the boost.
Do you honestly believe he hasn't performed consistently? Because as Paul mentioned earlier, the 16-17 season, he was consistent. Last season, he was injured, suspended, and still put up decent numbers.
Let me just say this, right? With the exception of Romelu Lukaku and Jesse Lingard and Ashley Young last season, who has been consistent under Jose Mourinho? Literally no one else, right? It's those three guys. Alexis Sanchez was his big money buy, not looked. Maybe like 3 games, he's looked like, yeah, that's it. Otherwise, he's been terrible, right? Martial, we know Martial's a magnificent talent, not consistent. Rashford looks inconsistent. Yeah, okay. Lindelof, he's 2 30 million defenders. They don't look like they're up to it. It's just...
Lukaku, by the way, very generous to describe Lukaku as consistent last season. Consistent period, absolute disaster, consistent period. That's what actually happened.
It's basically just Jesse and Young.
The wonderful Liverpool team, everyone's so
right.
About, finished below us. We finished second, so with a whole bunch of inconsistent players, and you're going to attack Mourinho at that. How do we finish?
No. Look, United finished second because David De Gea had a miracle season, right?
Yeah. Look at the numbers.
You can't repeat what he did last season. He was the expected goals against. He should have conceded 11 more goals than he actually did. The amount of games De Gea turned into wins and draws purely from absolutely absurd. And he's the best goalie in the world, right? So you always have to count on a certain number of quality saves because he's the best goalie in the world. But even for the best goalie in the world, to do what he did last season was just absurd. Like statistically, that doesn't happen. And it's like the fact that he pulled it off is a miracle.
But he's the goalkeeper. I'm talking about the whole team. It can't be that bad to finish above a Liverpool team, got to a Champions League final that everyone's so obsessed with, a Spurs team that everyone praises. That team isn't as bad as you're making out to be, and it's no way. And Paul Pogba, why is he consistent when he goes to an environment that suits him, a World Cup, which Mourinho commented on? When he comes to Man United, there's so many distractions. He's come back flexing his muscles. He's had a go at the manager after giving the captain's armband. You can't see that's a problem.
So I just want to say, I do think that's a problem, but I think a lot of the rest of your argument almost undermines, because I think the problem with almost all arguments in almost any sphere of society is people get entrenched in a position. And I think you're absolutely right that there have been problems with the way Paul Pogba's conducted himself publicly. Now, I don't agree with every example, but I do think there have been numerous problems. The one thing that I profoundly disagree with about the point you made was citing the fact that Mourinho said that the environment suited Pogba. That's because Mourinho should be ashamed of how poorly he's done at getting the best out of Paul Pogba. And so it's very convenient for him to say, it's the environment. That's what enabled it to happen. How about a manager who recognises that different players need to be treated differently? This is not about making excuses for Pogba. At the Brighton away game, the one where Pogba came out afterwards and said my attitude wasn't right, which, by the way, that 100% translation problem, because that isn't about like not caring, that is about his application, his decision making. If you look at that game, Pogba was trying much, much, much too hard. Like, Pogba's worst performances come when he tries to do everything. That's easily the worst of Pogba. It's not when he drifts out of games, which does happen from time to time. But I could not agree more with the fact that the reason that Pogba was so much better in the World Cup is about tactics. I don't think it's about patriotism. I don't think he, in theory, cares more about playing for France than his club. I think it's about the combination of Deschamps making his job very clear and empowering him to do it. Because I know I mentioned,
but it's a lot to do with the players that he's part of. Like, you watch the way France set up. At times, I don't think it's too different. They're all Pogba plays.
But this is my exact point, really. The second part of my point, which is that in order to get him to play that role, you have to treat him appropriately from a psychological perspective. Now, this is not. I agree with you that people give too many excuses for poor performances for Pogba. He's got to play on the left of a three. That's not true. We saw that in the World Cup. He can do other things. He's got to be alongside the right personnel. Well, that's true for any player apart from a tiny handful in world football. Even Leo Messi couldn't win the World Cup on his own, so there are truths there, but I agree there are too many excuses made. I mean, listen, my mum is French. Paul Pogba just won the World Cup for the country I've supported, like one of the two countries I've supported all my life. I'm definitely biased in favour of Paul Pogba, but I can put my biases aside when he's behaving not great in public and playing badly. But I think the flip side is that because too many people make too many excuses, there are things used as a stick to beat him with. Like, I just looked up the stats. In our 15 games in the Europa League, now he got 5 who scored man of the matches. Now, that isn't a definitive anything. That just shows that his numbers in 5 of those games were the best of any player in the United States.
Fantastic in the Europa League as well, and he was totally different when it came to playing the Premier League.
But Pogba also got 10 assists in the Premier League last season, got 4 man of the matches the season before. So this is not like a tiny handful of performances. And honestly, like
missed a lot last season too.
Yeah, the assist numbers in his first season in charge, there is no greater crime in the history of football statistics than Paul Pogba's assist numbers in his first season at Man United, because my goodness gracious me, does Zlatan Ibrahimovic owe those numbers an apology? It's like, I don't think that Paul Pogba has been Man United's best player every game he's played. I'm not that crazy. But he is one of the reasons, from a pure football perspective, that I want to watch United. And the idea that he's been United's best player in very few of his games, I think that is just because he's like not being United enough at the moment, and he's not buying in. And also Mourinho's relentless like every club Jose Mourinho has ever been at, he's turned the fans against some of their best players. Like, that's his thing, and that's what he's doing now.
Right,
and
before we get into a Mourinho beating session, we need to cut to an ad break. Right, now, if the worst was to happen, and I'm sure there's people sitting here watching now going, that ain't the worst that could happen. If Paul Pogba was to leave Manchester United, what does it mean? 1 for Manchester United, 2 for the manager, 3 for the board, because Ed Woodward will have seen 2 record signings go out the door within a couple of years. That can't be good. Does that highlight the need for longer term planning? Does it highlight the need for director of football? There's a million things at play here. Dale, I'm going to come to you first. What's your thoughts on all of that?
I think I wouldn't call it the worst thing that could happen if he did leave. I think that at the moment he's creating a toxic atmosphere. It's not good. It would be the worst thing possible for Ed Woodward, given the commercial power Paul Pogba brings with the old Adidas deal and just being so marketable. But Manchester United needs to come out of that zone. We need to look at performances, looking at to improve the club, to run the club, and to get back being successful again. And that's putting the team first. I don't think Paul Pogba really does much for this team, especially in this current state of mind. Maybe in the past, the lads mentioned assists, they're impressive. But at the moment, this Paul Pogba is not good for Manchester United. It's clear he wants to leave. And the best thing is that he does leave. They might get a lot of money for him and get a player in that, one, wants to play for the club, just not looking forward just to the next international break. Looking forward to playing for Manchester United. That's the most important thing for me. And a player that we don't just make an excuse for, we have to sign this player to get the most out of him. We've signed players to get the most out of Pogba, and we're still not seeing those results. And I can just add too, in the games we've had this season that Paul Pogba's played in midfield, I don't think in any of those games he's been our best midfielder alone. Not our best player, our best midfielder, I don't think.
I think it was man of the match in the Leicester game.
No question.
Ultimately, look, here's the thing, right? For Mourinho, it's fantastic if Pogba leaves, because that is a huge statement of confidence in him as a manager. Because if they've backed him over the club's record signing, face of the club, best player, all that stuff, that's huge for Mourinho, right? That's amazing. That's like that's like just saying, yes, this man is invincible. He's made of vibranium. For Ed Woodward, it's disastrous because, like you say, he's lost Di Maria and Pogba now. And Pogba also has added bonus of being an Adidas guy, so you can market him in everything with the kit on. It's perfectly like the year before when it was Rooney was the big United guy. Rooney was a Nike guy, so it was like obviously you make loads of money, Rooney, but you could make even more if he had been an Adidas guy. So Pogba Adidas, so the dream. So then I mean, who were they look at getting? And they look to get Milinkovic-Savic, and probably tactically, is he more of a Mourinho guy? I mean, not really. He's more of an attacking midfielder, but could he play a more restrictive role? I don't know. The point is, you're not going to find someone's market like Pogba. So for Woodward, it would be a disaster, even though I'm sure he'd try and parlay that money into signing some star player that doesn't want to be signed. Bale, yeah. I mean, look, the thing is, there was a window of like literally a month where United could have got Bale. If they'd pushed hard for him before Zidane resigned, there was a window like, get him. Because Bale was not happy under Zidane. But not even a month, like 2 weeks or whatever, after the Champions League final, United should have gone right at him. 150 million here, have him for Bale. And I bet you they would have accepted. Because as soon as Zidane decided to resign, it was over. Bale's not leaving now. Bale's happy without Zidane. But anyway, so for United, it wouldn't be good for United because you're losing your best player, most talented player. I completely and utterly refute the notion that he's not good for United or that he's a problem for United. United aren't better without Paul Pogba. The whole point of that, and again, it's like, Pogba's great toxic atmosphere. No, Mourinho's great toxic atmosphere. And look, I know I'm hardly the first time I've heard this that Mourinho's not good for United right now, but he's not. And again, it's we're all focusing on Pogba like Pogba's the problem because that's what Mourinho wants us to do. Look at it, right? Apart from Jesse Lingard and Ashley Young, and I mean maybe Lukaku, maybe not Lukaku, but that's three guys.
Where's this Ashley Young propaganda coming from?
Hey, come on! Last season, look, and I know what you're saying because he's terrible, but last season, come on. Give him his due. He shut Mohamed Salah up twice. No one else in the world did that. All right? So
the whole team shut him up.
Hey, Youngie did it twice, man. Give the man his due. All right?
All right, but that doesn't mean... All right, so that's inconsistent. 2 games. All right, we can do a whole debate on Ashley.
The point is, right? Youngie was consistent last season. Lingard's been pretty much great whenever he's played under Mourinho. And Lukaku had these 2 stretches of absolutely phenomenal play. Apart from those guys, right? Since Zlatan left the club, since Zlatan's injury, basically, who's been consistently great for Man United? Name me one player. Not a single player. Who?
No, absolutely. That is just not true, Dale. That is just not true. Matic was run into the ground in the middle of period of last season and was really poor for a good few games in a row. I haven't got the details of the games in front of me, but they're
also. Let's just be real about Matic. One thing, he's not good enough for Man United. I'm sorry, everyone can.
Come on, like this is the polarized problem that I'm saying.
But this is
Dale going. He was absolutely consistent all season last season. Not true. And you saying he's not good enough for Man United. That's not true either.
As a defensive midfielder, he's not good. As a central midfielder, box to box, energetic guy, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I would play him there 9 times out of 10 in any game. Defensive mid, holding the midfield, base midfield, no. Because he passes the ball too slowly out the back. And that doesn't just affect Pogba, it affects the entire team. And the way the ball moves from front to back. You take Matic out of that team, out of that position, put him further forward, mate, he's golden. Because that's what he's always been, a box-to-box midfielder. And at Chelsea, for example, the reason he thrived at Chelsea was because he played next to Cesc Fabregas, who Cesc sat deep and held midfield and passed the ball around. Matic just went, boom, and then got back and tackled as well. So... But anyway, the point is, it's not about Matic. The point is, literally, 3 guys. And if you want to add Matic, okay, I'll give you Matic, mate. That's 4. That's 4 out of how many? How many players is that? That's absurd. And how many of those players has he bought? The guy signed Mkhitaryan for 30 million quid, binned him off after 6 months, basically. But barely played him, gave him a few games, binned him off.
By the way, 0 out of those 4 players were consistent. They all had really good patches of form last season, all of them. But I don't.
Last season.
No, we have enough talented individuals to lift the teams, to provide moments of magic, to win a lot of games. And one of those, arguably the most important of all of them, if you want to build something for the future, is Paul Pogba. Now, the one thing that I would say about this is if we are, as a club, going to hop on board the Jose Mourinho train and ride it to wherever it's going, then you might as well sell Paul Pogba, because you've got a player of his quality and a manager who's prepared to drop him from Scott McTominay in the Champions League, which we got knocked out of, by the way.
Are we a better club with losing Pogba, potentially losing Martial, re-signing Fellaini?
No,
this is I have to sort of semi-defend Mourinho here a little bit, right? Because as Paul hinted at, as Dale hinted at, right? If you've got Mourinho, right, and you've signed him, you know what he's about, then you have to back him, right? And Woodward has, and this is where I come down. I've always said it's a hierarchy of blame at Man United, right? So the players need to be blamed for their performances. Pogba needs to be blamed for his bad performances, right? He's not playing as well as he should be, and he's not. Let's be fair, right? He's being undermined. He's not playing as well as he should. Then you go upper level. Then Mourinho. Why is the players, in this case, why is Pogba not playing as well as he should? Mourinho's tactics need to be blamed. His management needs to be blamed. The highest level is Ed Woodward. Because, first of all...
It's arguably a level above him as well, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. That's
let's not go level above him because we'll be
No,
here.
but we should. No, Mo, we absolutely should. And it is ridiculous that there are plain banners flying with Ed Woodward's name on it that don't mention the Glazers. That is just stupid. And so it's really important. Sorry for getting wound up. No. I know what you're saying, but the if you don't take the root of the problems at this club to the top level, then you're missing a crucial level. So one of the things I wanted to say, Mo mentioned briefly that you said, Dale, that Pogba's creating a toxic atmosphere at the club, and I think that is wildly overstating the case. I think Mourinho has created... Pogba isn't handling it very well, but I think...
There's definitely two involved. I totally agree. But it's the behaviour from... But
we've had...
As a Manchester United fan, I think that it's just as important to represent your country at a World Cup. You might say that's significant to win a World Cup with France. It is, absolutely. It's almost...
I agree with you.
Manchester United.
Especially given the fact that they're paying his incredibly substantial wages. I completely agree with that. But we've played 4 games this season. He was the best player in a quarter of them. That's only one game. But I mean, honestly, Dale, I know you're arguing a position, but I don't know how goal and assist, absolutely excellent in the second half of that game against Leicester, basically ran the show, basically responsible for us winning that game.
The derby last season against City, okay? His game that day wasn't particularly standout or brilliant. He scored 2 goals. That was it. And also,
but I'm not just saying the goal and the assist are the reason. Watch that Leicester game again and tell me Pogba wasn't our best player in that game. And if you want to say that, that's
all right. We got to find a winner.
Let me just make the point that I was trying to make.
All right.
I agree that part of the problem with Pogba this season so far has been about the stuff going on in his head and the distractions and all of that. Not social media, by the way. He doesn't really use it very much. That's worth saying. But the general distractions about transfers, a big part of the problem. But also, Pogba massively stepped up for United and Mourinho. There's no way he should have been playing in that first game. He was in the World Cup final. And then he didn't. He came back, had 1 day of training, and was like, "Yeah, boss, I'll play." And he's played no preseason.
Be blasted the whole situation and set off this fire. We would.
All right. Let's call it a day there because we've got the 30-second round where you got this to go into. I think that's a really good point about Pogba playing in the first game, and maybe it has exacerbated the situation. But that's why the manager is called the manager. So let's get into it then. 30-second round. It's time for you to win this debate, and then you can walk around Old Trafford. Obviously, you know there's a gown and a crown that you have to wear around Old Trafford for the next week until the next debate. So who is going to be able to wear the crown and say they are the massive debater for the huge debates at Full-Time Devils? So we're going to start off with Paul. We're going to come to you first. You've got 30 seconds to tell us. This is your message, like a little message from you to Paul Pogba, and then why you should win the debate, all in 30 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes.
Hit it.
Bonjour Paul, merci beaucoup pour ramener la coupe à la maison. But now it's time for you to step up for Manchester United. We love you, or at least we really could. You could be a United legend for the rest of your career. I know that the managers are what's it, but don't worry, he'll be gone soon. He's Jose Mourinho. He never lasts. So just stick it out and enjoy the fruits of the Zidane regime to come.
Decent. Dale, are you ready?
Of course I am.
Can you speak French? I haven't said go yet.
Can't speak French, unfortunately. I think Cole's going to win on that note, but
all right. I'll let the funky music do the talking then. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hit it.
So all I want from Paul Pogba is to understand fans' point of view. We understand that you have the ability to be one of the best midfielders in the world. There's no denying that. We want you to want it. We want you to want to be United legend. We want you to be a leader. We want you to be everything. But until we can see that from you, it's very, very hard to buy into what Pogba's doing. And I'm not taking sides here, but for the better of Manchester United,
time. Just missed off the last line. Fair play for stopping.
It's hard, isn't it?
Mo, are you ready?
Yeah, mate. I'm born ready.
Hit it.
All right, Paul, as the great Stormzy once said, if Mourinho comes in your face again, you just look at him and you go, listen, mate, you want to talk about Lord of this matter. You ain't even Lord of the Yard, mate. All right, just tell him that. Just look him dead in the eye and tell him that. Because I'll tell you what, that boy's going to be gone. He's going to get sacked. He's going to start a fight with you. He's going to start a fight with Wilbur, start a fight with Martial. They'll boot him. He'll get sacked. He'll get 10 million quid and he'll go ruin some other club. Don't sweat it, bro. Listen to me. Next time any fan gives you any Jeff, anyone, just look them dead in the eye, right? And you say, you paid your dues, you look them dead in the eye and say, you give me your best shot, pal. I can take it. You're Paul Pogba, you're world class. Suck it up.
Ooh. 3 good little debates. 3 good 30-second rounds. 90 seconds of fury, if you will. I have to give a decision, don't I? I have to decide who's won the debate and give like a Jerry's final thought, and then like some. Like every episode of Saved by the Bell, there has to be a message. So what I'm going to say is, I really like Mo's point about the hierarchy of blame at Manchester United. Absolutely, the players have to take some, because it's not a black and white thing. There isn't if you just sort Paul Pogba out, whether that's gone or he's booked his ideas up, does that mean the defence is right then? Does that mean that Lukaku's going to finish more chances than he has been doing? Does that mean that we're not £600 million in debt? There's loads of different things that aren't just going to be fixed with Paul Pogba. There's a hierarchy of blame. I absolutely agree on that. Paul Pogba, as well as other players, as well as the manager, some say tactics, attitude, relationship with the fans, whether that is artificial and if it's...
Is this your 30-second round, Steve?
No, this is my final thought. I can go for 17 minutes if I want. Where there's a multitude of problems at the top at the moment, from the Glazers to Ed Woodward to how long it takes us to replace key staff. Like, we're about to bounced. We've only just started advertising for it this week. Like, I don't know who is in charge of running Manchester United and whether the Glazers are running it to be the best in the world, which is what some clubs are doing. I highly doubt they are. And that is a problem for us, ultimately. In terms of who wins the debate about Paul Pogba, I have to go with what Paul said. I really like the opening lines. I thought that was a killer. And I agree with the message. It's not all perfect. He has got something to blame, but he is also one of the best footballers at this club when he books his ideas up. That's what I think, at least, anyway. I'm sure you guys in the comments are going to tell me totally different. Get up here and make sure you let us know who you guys think have won the debate, and there'll be a vote coming out very soon as well for what we talk about next week. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure to go and check out all these guys' work online where they're writing, as well as give them a follow on social media, apart from Paul, who pretends it doesn't exist, but go and check out the podcast that he's on. And we will see you guys in the next one. Laters.